currently doing my internship at Arvas College of Naturopathy and Yogic Sciences. So we started learning about biochemistry of carbohydrates. I've finished till now 2 modules. So now moving on to the third module. Last class in module 2 we discussed about pathways, that is metabolism of carbohydrates, both major and minor pathways. So today we'll be dealing about blood glucose level and its regulation and glucose tolerance test, and also we'll discuss about a major disorder of carbohydrate metabolism, that is diabetes mellitus, and other disorders of the carbohydrate metabolism. So moving on to blood glucose level and its regulation. So normally blood glucose level must be maintained within the narrow limits of 70 to 100 mg per dl. This is the normal value of blood glucose level. But after ingestion of carbohydrate meal, it may rise to 120 to 140 mg per dl. But after 2 hours after meal, and again it will come back to 70 to 100 mg per dl. And levels above the normal range are termed as, that is above the 100 mg per dl, they are termed as hyperglycemia. And if the blood glucose level is below the normal level, then it is termed as hypoglycemia. Then sources of blood glucose are, there are different sources which contribute to this blood glucose level. So first is dietary sources. Dietary sources is what we take in meals. In dietary, carbohydrates are digested and absorbed as monosaccharides. The liver is capable of converting fructose and galactose into glucose. Finally, the glucose is what what is gonna absorb in a body. And then gluconeogenesis. So gluconeogenesis is the formation of new synthesis of new glucose from other non-carbohydrate sources. And glycogenolysis is nothing but that storage glycogen is broken down into a glucose. So these three are the sources of blood glucose level. And here glucose is primarily derived from glycogenolysis, hepatic, that is between the meals. This glycogenolysis happens between the meals. When we doesn't have much of glucose in between the meals, this stored glycogen will start to divide and glycogen is released. And gluconeogenesis becomes predominant source of glucose in the late night. So late night will be in the fasting period. So the glucose level will be low. So the gluconeogenesis predominantly it occurs in the late night. And during daytime, gluconeogenesis may be or may less active, it depending on the consumption of the snacks, coffee, tea, fruit, and juices. So what are the factors involved in the homeostasis of blood glucose level? So the first is hormones, metabolic processes, renal mechanism. So the liver is the organ primarily responsible for the controlling the concentration of the glucose in the blood. It can rapidly take up and release the glucose in response to the concentration of the blood glucose. There are two important hormones, that is insulin and glucagon. Insulin is a hypoglycemic hormone. Glucagon is a hyperglycemic hormone. When you are full, when you are have taken the meal, this insulin is gonna act so that it will reduces the level of the glucose in the blood. So glucagon, whereas this glucagon acts when the glucose level is very low in the body, when you are in the fasting state. So now we'll see, first we'll see about maintenance of glucose in fat state, that is hyperglycemic condition. So when you are taken a meal, what will happen? So how the insulin will act, we'll see that. Normally there is an increased blood glucose level shortly after heat meal. It's known as postprandial hyperglycemia. It's a normal physiological process. After a meal, your blood glucose level, it should be 70 to 100, but it will raise to 120 to 140 mg per dl. This is known as postprandial hyperglycemia. And then increased level of glucose releases the insulin by beta cells of islets of Langerhans. So this hormone reduces the blood glucose level. So now it's very high, blood glucose level is high. So the insulin has to reduce that blood glucose. So it has following ways. So we'll see how insulin reduces the blood glucose level. So the first is by stimulating the active transport of glucose across the cell membranes of muscles and adipose tissue by stimulating the GLUT4 transporter, but not in the liver. So it will activate this insulin, activate the transport, so that muscle and adipose tissue will utilize the glucose, and this won't occur in the liver because glucose is rapidly taken up into the liver as it is permeable to glucose via GLUT2 transporter. And in the liver, insulin increases the use of glucose by the glycolysis. So glycolysis is happened in the liver, and insulin, this increases this glycolysis and gives a ATPs. And glucokinase is a important regulating blood glucose. Glucokinase is an important enzyme in regulating the blood glucose after meal. So in the muscle and the liver, insulin stimulates the glycogenesis. In both the muscle and the liver, this insulin stimulates glycogenesis. Glycogenesis is storage. So already the blood glucose is high in the body. So now they have to, this insulin stimulates stimulates the glycogenesis, so that all the glucose will stored in a liver and the muscle. By stimulating the glycogen synthesis. Glycogen synthesis is a hormone enzyme which helps in the formation, helps in the glycogenesis. So it also we have seen in the last class about the CAMP. So by reducing the elevated CAMP levels, and thereby leading to the suppression of glycogenolysis. There is a lot of glucose in the blood now. There's no need of more glucose to our body. So glycogenolysis is suppressed by the action of insulin. And insulin inhibits the gluconeogenesis. So glucose is also not needed by the body now. So insulin also inhibits the gluconeogenesis by suppressing the key enzymes of gluconeogenesis like pyruvate carboxylase, phosphophenol pyruvate carboxylase, glucose 6-phosphatase. And in adipose tissue, glucose is converted to glycerol 3-phosphate needed for the formation of triacyl glycerol, and inhibits the lipolysis by inhibiting the hormone sensitive lipase. And insulin also increases the protein synthesis and decreases the protein breakdown, that is catabolism, and thereby decreases the release of amino acids. So decrease in the release of amino acids results in the decrease in the gluconeogenesis. So this is the overall action of insulin hormone. So this is stimulating. Insulin stimulates the lipogenesis, that is lipid synthesis, and glycogenesis, that is glycogen synthesis, and also active transport of glucose in muscle and the adipose cells, and glycolysis. And also insulin hormone stimulates the glycolysis for the formation of ATPs. It also stimulates the synthesis of protein. And here you can see it inhibits the insulin inhibits the lipolysis. It inhibits the gluconeogenesis, formation of new glucose. It also inhibits the protein catabolism and also inhibits the glycogenolysis. So next, moving on to the maintenance of blood glucose in fasting state, that is hypoglycemic state. Now you are under fasting condition. Your body doesn't have enough of glucose in your blood. So now how the hormone, this glucagon, gonna act? We'll see. So this hypoglycemia causes a release of hyperglycemic hormones. So the main hormone here is glucagon, and other hormones are epinephrine, glucocorticoids, anterior pituitary hormones, growth hormones, and ACTH, and also thyroxine. So now we'll see first about glucagon, how it's gonna act on blood glucose level. So this hormone is produced by the alpha cells of islets of Langerhans of pancreas. It opposes the action of insulin. So the action of glucagon is opposite to the insulin. In the liver, it stimulates the glycogenolysis. Now there's no enough glucose in the body. So the whatever stored glycogen is there. So it stimulates the glycogenolysis, this breakdown of glycogen. So there will be a release of glucose to the bloodstream. by activating the enzyme phosphorylase. Phosphorylase is an enzyme required for glycogenolysis, and it also inhibits the glycogen synthesis. There's no enough of glucose in a body, so it inhibits the glycogen synthesis. Doesn't have an effect on muscle phosphorylase due to lack of receptors. So this glucagon doesn't have an effect on muscle because due to lack of receptors, it doesn't have, but it only acts on the liver. And glucagon exerts its effect on metabolic processes through generation of the cyclic AMP. It also enhances the gluconeogenesis. Now there is no enough of glucose in our body, so it enhances the gluconeogenesis. There is a formation of new glucose from the amino acids and lactate by inducing the action of key enzymes of the gluconeogenesis. So next, moving on to the next hormone, adrenaline. This is secreted by the adrenal medulla. It stimulates the glycogenolysis in the liver. It also stimulates the glycogenesis level in the liver and muscle also. This adrenaline stimulates glycogenolysis in both liver and muscle, whereas glucagon is used to stimulate only glycogenesis only in the liver by stimulating the same enzyme, that is phosphorylase activity via cyclic AMP. Next is glucocorticoids. They are secreted by the adrenal cortex. They increases gluconeogenesis, protein catabolism to provide glucogenic amino acid for the gluconeogenesis, activity of aminotransferase, hepatic uptake of amino acids for gluconeogenesis, and activity of the enzymes for gluconeogenesis. It increases glucocorticoids, overall increases gluconeogenesis and protein catabolism. And also it inhibits the utilization of glucose in extrahepatic tissue. Thus the action of glucocorticoids. So it inhibits the utilization of glucose, and it's antagonistic to, hence it is antagonistic to the insulin activity. Next is anterior pituitary hormones. So anterior pituitary hormones are growth hormone and ACTH, antagonize the action of, that's opposite to the action of insulin by elevating the blood glucose level. So growth hormone decreases glucose uptake the muscle and is in the muscle, and the ACTH decreases the glucose utilization. Mainly this growth hormone will decreases the glucose uptake by the muscles, and ACTH release decreases the decreases the glucose utilization by the other tissues. Next is thyroxine. So thyroxine is secreted by the thyroid gland. Thyroxine accelerates the hepatic glycogenolysis. This also same as of glucagon. It increases the hepatic rate of glycogenolysis with consequent rise in the blood glucose. It may also increase the rate of absorption of exosomes from the intestine. So next is renal control mechanism. So kidneys also have a role in maintaining the blood glucose level. So when blood glucose level rises to relatively high levels, the kidney also exerts a regulatory effect. So glucose is continuously filtered by a glomeruli, but is normally reabsorbed completely in the renal tubules. So the capacity of this tubular system to reabsorb the glucose is limited to 350 mg per minute. So which is known as tubular maximum of glucose. Their limit, kidneys limit are 350 mg per minute. So if the blood glucose level is raised above 180 mg per dl or 180 mg per ml, complete tubular reabsorption of glucose does not occur. So the glucose level is more due to some decrease in the insulin activity. The glucose level is high, so this complete tubular reabsorption doesn't occur. So this extra amount of glucose will appear in the urine. So this is known as glycosuria. The 180 mg per 100 ml is the limiting level of glucose in the blood, above which tubular reabsorption does not occur, which is known as renal threshold value for glucose. So 180 mg per 100 ml is the renal threshold value for glucose. Anything exceed, if the glucose is exceeds more than this value, it won't absorb in the renal tubules and it will appear in the urine and it terms as glycosuria. So thus, by excreting extra amount of sugar in the urine during hyperglycemic state, and reabsorbing sugar during the hypoglycemic state, the kidney helps in regulating the levels of glucose in the blood. So we'll see about glycosuria in detail now. Excretion of glycosuria means excretion of detectable amount of sugar in urine is termed as glycosuria. So there are three types of glycosuria. Alimentary glycosuria. So blood sugar level of some individuals after the meal rises rapidly above normal renal threshold and results in glycosuria. So in some individuals, the blood sugar level will rapidly, after meal, it increases above the normal threshold. So it will result in, so the excess amount of excess glucose will pass into the urine. This results in glycosuria due to increased rate of absorption of glucose from the intestine. That's why it is termed as elementary glycosuria. So here in this condition, blood glucose level will return to normal after 2 hours after meal. And it's a benign condition, nothing serious. Next is renal glycosuria. Renal glycosuria, it's observed due to impaired tubular absorption of a glucose and have lower renal threshold for glucose. This is due to something impaired in the tubular reabsorption and have lower renal threshold for glucose. That's why they can't reabsorb all the whole amount of glucose. And it's also a benign condition and it is unrelated to diabetes. It's nothing to do with diabetes, renal glycosuria. Its problem is in kidney tubules and it may occur temporarily in pregnancy without symptoms of the diabetes. It may result from inherited defects in kidney or maybe acquired kidney disease. Next is diabetic glycosuria. So this one is a pathological condition and it is due to the deficiency of insulin which causes diabetes mellitus. Here blood glucose level exceeds the normal renal threshold and the excess glucose will passes into the urine. So this overall view about insulin activity. So the sources of blood glucose are dietary sources, that is starch, sucrose, glucose. The digestion and absorption takes place and glucose will go into the liver and this will be and this is also responsible for a blood glucose level. Next is through glycogenolysis in muscle. So glyco end product will be lactate. So this lactate and amino acids, the glycerol and propionate, they will be utilized for the synthesis of new glucose, that is gluconeogenesis, and they are also responsible for the blood glucose level. And glycogenolysis in the liver, that is breakdown of glycogen into glucose. So this also is responsible for the blood glucose level. So fasting blood glucose level, the normal fasting blood glucose level is 70 to 100 mg per dl. And postprandial, it's normal, that is after a meal, 120 to 140 mg per dl. And excreted in urine, if it is exceeds 180 mg per dl blood glucose, then it will be excreted in urine, that is glycosuria. Next is hypoglycemia. So hypoglycemia is when the blood glucose level falls less than 45 mg per dl. The symptoms of hypoglycemia appear. So normal value is 70 to 100 mg per dl. So but when the blood glucose level falls less than 45 mg per dl, some symptoms of hypoglycemia appear. They are headache, anxiety, confusion, sweating, slurred speech, seizures, coma, and death if not corrected. So there are 5 kinds of hypoglycemia based on the conditions. So we'll see one by one. First is postprandial hypoglycemia. It is also called as reactive hypoglycemia and is observed in subjects with an elevated insulin secretion following a meal, causes transient hypoglycemia. So this is postprandial hypoglycemia. Fasting hypoglycemia is seen in beta cell tumor and hepatocellular damage. So next is due to alcohol intake in some individuals who starved or engaged in prolonged exercises. This alcohol consumption may also cause hypoglycemia. And due to insulin overdose, this is a common complication of insulin therapy in the diabetic patients. So hypoglycemia in premature infants, because this premature and underweight infants have small stores of liver glycogen, hence they'll be undergo hypoglycemia. Next, moving on to the glucose tolerance test. So this glucose tolerance test is a diagnostic test for diabetes, can be made on the basis of individual's response to oral glucose load. The oral, so it's also called as oral glucose tolerance test. So first is preparation of the subject. So he or she should be in an overnight fasting at least 10 to 12 hours. So it should not take after overnight fasting, he should not take any meal in between. He should fast at least 10 to 12 hours, and he should not do any strenuous exercises before the test. And he also avoid any medications that is related to carbohydrate metabolism. He should restrain it. The ideal time is morning, that is 8 to 11 a.m. is the ideal timing for the glucose tolerance test. So procedure for GTT. So should be conducted preferably in the morning. A fasting blood sample is drawn and urine is collected. So now the subject is given 75 gram glucose orally dissolved in 300 ml of water to be drink in about 5 minutes. First they'll give 75 gram of glucose orally, and which is dissolved in 300 ml of water. And then after that they'll collect a blood and urine samples at 30 minutes interval for at least 2 hours. At an interval of 30 minutes, they'll collect urine and blood samples at least for 2 hours. So now all the blood samples are subjected to glucose estimation. Now they will check the glucose levels in the blood, and urine samples are qualitatively tested for the glucose. So now we'll see the interpretation of glucose tolerance test. So first is normal glucose tolerance curve. So here you can see the green color line in this graph. This is a normal glucose tolerance curve. Here you can see at fasting state, this is a timing, this is a blood glucose level mg per dl in y-axis. So at fasting state, that is 0 hours, you can see the blood glucose level in normal condition, it is at 70 mg per dl. And after when they give glucose orally, the blood glucose level raises to 150 mg per dl. Now slightly after 1 hour, it decreases to 120 mg per dl. And after that 110, and at 2 hours, it comes to normal. That is 70 to 100 mg per dl. So it comes to the normal condition. That's why it is a normal glucose tolerance curve. Here you can see 70 after glucose intake, it raised, and after 2 hours, it comes to normal level. This is the normal glucose tolerance curve. So next is diminished glucose tolerance curve. So this red line in the graph is decreased glucose tolerance curve. So this occurs in diabetes mellitus and endocrine hyperactivities. Like endocrine hyperactivities like hyperthyroidism, hyperpituitarism. In those conditions, this diminished glucose tolerance curve will appear. So this is because decreased ability of body to utilize the glucose. And fasting glucose, so there's so much of glucose in our body, but body is not able to utilize the glucose. The fasting glucose is higher than the normal units. Blood glucose level may not return to fasting level even after the 3 hours. So you can see at a fasting state only, it is the value of blood glucose is around 140 mg per dl, and it raises continuously. After glucose intake, it reaches more than 200, and it is almost around 240 mg per dl. Then after 1.5 years, it reduces, and then even after 2 hours, it is still under 200. So normal level is 70 to 100 mg per dl, but even after 2 hours or 3 hours gap, the blood glucose level did come to a normal level. So this is a diminished glucose tolerance curve because body is not able to utilize the glucose. So this is mainly seen in diabetes mellitus and the endocrine hyperactivity conditions like hyperthyroidism and hyperpituitarism. So next is increased glucose tolerance. So this blue line in a blue line in this graph is increased glucose tolerance. So this occurs in endocrine hypoactivity. Endocrine hypoactivity like hypothyroidism, hypopituitarism. In these conditions, we can see this increased glucose tolerance. So increased ability here, it was decreased ability. Here, increased ability of body to utilize glucose. So it will increase, the body will utilize more and more glucose. So fasting glucose level is lower than the normal. Here you can see it is around 60. Fasting glucose level is around 60, and then after glucose it might reach to up to 70. Then after 1 hour it again reduced to 60, and after 2 hours of the glucose meal it again comes to 50. So the this is the increased glucose tolerance because the glucose utilization is more in the body. So this occurs in the endocrine hypoactivity. So this is overall view of the glucose tolerance test. So this is a diagnostic test for the diabetes, and which should be done in the morning after overnight fasting. So next, moving on to the disorder, a major metabolic disorder seen in carbohydrate metabolism, that is diabetes mellitus. So definition of diabetes mellitus is, it's not a disease, it's a syndrome of impaired carbohydrate, protein and fat metabolism, which is caused by due to two reasons, that is lack of insulin secretion or due to decreased sensitivity of the tissues to the insulin. So we'll see the classification of diabetes mellitus. So there are two types of diabetes mellitus, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 or insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So it's also known as juvenile onset diabetes mellitus. Type 2 is non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. It's a late onset diabetes mellitus. So we'll see in detail about type 1 diabetes mellitus. It causes, the cause for type 1 diabetes mellitus is lack of insulin secretion due to the destruction of pancreatic beta cell, maybe due to a viral infection or autoimmune disorders or hereditary tendency. So there is no secretion of insulin in this type 1 diabetes mellitus due to these reasons. So onset is at about 14 years of age. So hence it is a juvenile onset diabetes mellitus. Symptoms are like polyuria, that's frequent urination, polydipsia, excessive thirst, polyphagia, excessive hunger. The patients are not obese. The type 1 diabetes mellitus patients are not obese. They are prone to develop metabolic complications such as ketoacidosis later. Next, moving on to the type 2 diabetes mellitus. The cause for type 2 diabetes mellitus is decreased insensitivity. There is production of insulin, but there is no sensitivity. Decreased insensitivity, that is decreased response to insulin of target tissues to the insulin. This is a cause. Insulin is there, but there is a decreased responses of the tissues to the insulin. So this often referred to as insulin resistance diabetes mellitus. So this is due to inadequate insulin receptors on the cell surfaces of the target tissues. There is a lack of insulin receptors on the cell surfaces. So this leading to the insulin resistance and causing type 2 diabetes mellitus. So the onset occurs after age 40 and disorder develops gradually. So symptoms are found in obese and associated with multiple metabolic abnormalities and symptoms, although ketoacidosis is usually not present in type 2. And clinical features of diabetes mellitus, generally we'll discuss now about the clinical features of diabetes mellitus. So polyuria is frequent urination. This loss of glucose in urine causes osmotic diuresis. The osmotic effect of glucose in the renal tubules greatly decreases the tubular reabsorption of fluid. Hence, the polyuria occurs. That is, frequent urination occurs due to decreases in the reabsorption of the fluid in the renal tubules. So this leading to the polyuria. Polydipsia. Polydipsia, why it occurs? Because fluid loss and hyperglycemia increases the osmolarity of plasma. So they'll be stimulating the thirst center. Hence, there'll be excessive thirst in the diabetes mellitus patient. And muscle wasting and weight loss, it is due to the stimulation of protein breakdown to provide amino acid for the gluconeogenesis. So ketoacidosis. So increased utilization of fat for energy causes the metabolic acidosis. Due to release of keto acids such as ketoacidoacidic acid and beta-butyric acid into plasma more rapidly than can taken up and oxidized by the tissue cells. These strong acids, these are very strong acids. So these strong acids are buffered when present in blood or other tissues, and that leads to the loss of buffer cation that depletes the alkali reserve, causing the ketoacidosis. As these are both strong acids, they'll deplete the alkali reserve, so they leads to a ketoacidosis. So secondary effects of diabetes mellitus are heart attack, stroke. So this diabetes mellitus gradually increases and can cause these disorders. There is heart attack, stroke, cerebral arterial occlusion, nephropathy, retinopathy, blindness, peripheral neuropathy, cataract, etc. These are the secondary effect of diabetes mellitus. In addition to these diseases, hypertension secondary to renal injury and atherosclerosis secondary to abnormal lipid metabolism often develops in the diabetes mellitus patient. So we'll see the difference between the type 1 diabetes mellitus and type 2 diabetes mellitus. The frequency is 5 to 10% in insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, and it is 90 to 95%. So age of onset is less than 20 years, that is juvenile onset, whereas type 2 diabetes is later age, that is after 40 years. So onset of symptoms are abrupt and very severe. Here it's very gradual and insidious. So plasma insulin level is low or absent. There is no production of insulin in type 1 diabetes mellitus, but in type 2 diabetes mellitus, it is normal to high. But there are lack of receptors here. Then body weight is low to normal. They are not obese. Here in type 2 diabetes, the diabetes patients are obese. And blood glucose level is here increased, here also increased. Insulin sensitivity here normal, but there is no production of insulin. Here insulin sensitivity is decreased. Ketosis is common in type 1 diabetes mellitus. It's rare in type 2 diabetes. Acute complication are ketoacidosis. Here the acute complications in type 2 diabetes mellitus is hyperosmolar coma. And treatment with insulin is necessary in type 1 diabetes mellitus as there is no production of insulin in our body. So usually not required because there are already insulin secretion is there, but there's only there's a reduction in the sensitivity of the insulin. So now we'll see about metabolic changes in the diabetes mellitus. How these metabolic activities like glycolysis, gluconeogenesis all gonna change in diabetes mellitus. So due to deficiency of insulin relative, excess of glucose, excess of glucagon mostly affect metabolism in 3 tissues, that is liver, muscle and adipose tissue. So these are the 3 tissues which are gonna affect by the hormones, that is insulin and glucagon. So here glucagon is very high, but insulin is very less. So the lack of insulin activity in diabetes mellitus results in failure of transfer of glucose from the blood into the cells. So this leads to hyperglycemia. There's so much of glucose in our bloodstream, but here due to the inactivity of insulin, glucose from blood, there's failure of transfer of glucose from blood into the cells, and this leads to the hyperglycemia. So there's an increase in the blood glucose level in our body. So the body responds as it were in the fasting state. So there's so much of glucose, but body responds as it were because tissues are not getting the enough of glucose. So the body response will be like in the fasting state. with the stimulation of, so there will be a stimulation of glycogenolysis. There are already enough of glucose in our body. Again, glycogenolysis will occur. So breakdown of glycogen. So releases glucose, and that glucose will also add on to the blood glucose. And again, gluconeogenesis, that is new synthesis of new glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. This also will add up onto the blood glucose level, and lipolysis and proteolysis. So this will, so this body responds as in the fasting state, and it will stimulate all these processes, and these all releases the glucose, and they'll add up some more glucose to the blood. So increase in glucagon favors the lipolysis in adipose tissue. So this increased lipolysis leads to increased mobilization of fatty acids from adipose tissues to liver, where they are converted into ketone bodies. So in the adipose tissues, they are converted into a ketone bodies. Due to lack of insulin, the synthesis of enzyme lipoprotein lipase is required for the degradation of VLDL is decreased. So due to this insulin, lack of insulin, the synthesis of enzyme lipoprotein lipase, this is required for the degradation of the VLDL. So this leads to the elevated levels of plasma VLDL, so resulting in a hypertriglyceridemia. So that was all about diabetes mellitus, and diagnostic test for diabetes mellitus was glucose tolerance test. Now moving on to lactose intolerance. So this is the most common disorder of carbohydrate digestion in humans. This is due to the defect in the enzyme lactase. So continuous consumption of lactose by lactose intolerant individual causes typical symptoms of flatulence, bloating, etc. So this lactose is present in milk. So it may be congenital or acquired. So this acquired lactose intolerance is due to sudden and high intake of milk-based diet. This leads to the lactose intolerance. So if the milk is withdrawn temporarily, diarrhea will be limited. So for lactose intolerant people, the consumption of curd is more beneficial since the lactobacilli is present in the curd. They contain lactase. Hence, consumption of curd is beneficial in lactose intolerance patients. The best treatment is elimination of the lactose from the diet is the best remedy for this lactose intolerance. So next, moving on to the glycogen storage disorders. So these are the disorders both occurs in the glycogenolysis and glycogenesis. So first disease is von Greek's disease. So this is type 1 glycogenesis. The enzyme defect in von Greek's disease is glucose 6-phosphatase. So organs involved are liver, kidney, and intestine. So glycogen accumulates in the hepatocytes and renal cells, enlarged liver and kidney. Fasting hypoglycemia, lactic acidemia, hyperlipidemia, ketosis, gouty arthritis are the clinical features which should be seen in von Greek's disease. This is due to the defect in the enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase. Next is Pomme's disease. This is due to the defect in the enzyme lysosomal alpha-1,4 glucosidase. So organs involved in, all organs are involved. So here glycogen accumulates in the lysosomes in almost all the tissues. Heart is mostly involved in this disease. Heart is mostly involved. Enlarged liver and heart. So you can see enlarged liver and heart in this disease. Nervous system is also affected. Death occurs at an early age due to the heart failure in this Pomme's disease. Next is Coris disease. This is due to the defect in the enzyme amylo alpha-1,6 glucosidase. That is a debranching enzyme. So organs affected are liver, muscle, heart, and leukocytes. So branched chain glycogen accumulates. Liver enlarges. Clinical manifestations are similar but milder compared to this von Greek disease. Next is Anderson's disease. This is due to the defect in the enzyme glucosyl 4,6 transferase, that is branching enzyme. So the organs affected are most of the tissues. It's a rare disease. Glycogen with only few branches accumulate, and can see cirrhosis of liver and impairment in the liver function in this Anderson's disease. Next is McArdle's disease. This is due to a defect in the enzyme muscle glycogen phosphorylase. So this mainly affects the skeletal muscles. So muscle glycogen stores very high, not available during the exercise. Subjects cannot perform strenuous exercise in this McArdle's disease and suffer from muscle cramps when they perform strenuous exercise. Blood lactate and pyruvate do not increase after exercise. Muscle may get damaged due to this inadequate energy supply. Next is Hirsch's disease. Liver glycogen phosphorylase is affected, the defect enzyme, and organs affected is liver. Liver is enlarged, liver glycogen cannot form glucose, mild hypoglycemia and ketosis is seen. And then last is Torres disease. This is due to the defect in the enzyme phosphofructokinase. So it affects the skeletal muscle and erythrocytes mainly. And muscle cramps due to the exercise is seen, and blood lactate is not elevated and hemolysis occurs. So next, moving on to disorders of pentose phosphate pathway. There is HMP shunt pathway, disorders of HMP shunt pathway. Glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. So it is an inherited sex-linked trait, although deficiency occurs in all the cells, but it is more severe in the red blood cells. So decreased activity of glucose 6-phosphatase dehydrogenase impairs the synthesis of NADPH. We saw the importance of NADPH in our last class. So this will impair the synthesis of NADPH in RBCs. So hemoglobin and peroxidase in erythrocytes, which leads to the hemolysis of the red blood cells. So clinical features are usually do not exhibit. However, they develop hemolytic anemia if they are administered oxygen drug or exposed to severe function. Then only they'll develop hemolytic anemia. Severe infection results in the generation of free radicals in macrophages, which can enter the red blood cells and also causes the hemolysis. Only in severe infections, so hemolysis will happen. Next is Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. This is also a genetic disorder associated with the HMP shunt. An alteration in the transketolase activity that reduces its affinity with thiamine pyrophosphate is the biochemical lesion. Symptoms include mental disorder, loss of memory, and partial paralysis. So the enzyme alteration in this enzyme, that is transketolase activity, leads to Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. Next, moving on to disorder of galactose metabolism. So galactosemia is a disorder of galactose metabolism. So this is due to the enzyme deficiency of enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase. It's a rare congenital disease in infants inherited as an autosomal recessive disorder. So the features of galactosemia are increased galactose level in the circulation and urine. So it is termed as galactosemia, and in urine, if it passes through urine, it is termed as galactosuria. The accumulated galactose is diverted for the production of dalcitol by the enzyme aldose reductase, which has been implicated in the development of cataract. So deposition of dalcitol on the eyes, this will leads to the development of cataract. So accumulation of galactose 1-phosphate and galcitolol in various tissues like liver, nervous tissues, lens, and kidney leads to the impairment in their function. Galactose 1-phosphate inhibits the glycogen phosphorylase, resulting in hypoglycemia. Glycogen phosphorylase is an enzyme which is responsible for the glycogenolysis, that is a breakdown of glycogen into a glucose. So if there is no release of glucose from glycogen, so this will resulting in the hypoglycemia. So the clinical symptoms are loss of weight in infant, it's seen in infant, and hepatosplenomegaly, jaundice, mental retardation. In severe cases, it will be a cataract, amino aciduria, and albinuria is seen. So galactokinase deficiency, this leads to phosphorylation of galactose, which also results in the same, that is galactosemia and galactosuria. Next, moving on to the disorders of fructose metabolism. So first is essential fructosuria. This is due to the deficiency of enzyme hepatic fructokinase. So here fructose is not converted to fructose 1-phosphate. So this is condition is asymptomatic. There's only excretion of fructose in the urine. And hereditary fructose intolerance. It is due to the absence of enzyme aldolase B. This causes intracellular accumulation of fructose 1-phosphate and severe hyperglycemia, omitting hepatic failure and jaundice. So this is seen in hereditary fructose intolerance. So the best remedy for this hereditary fructose intolerance is to avoid the fructose meal or fructose containing foods. And that's all. So we finished about biochemistry of carbohydrates. So this was the third module. So we now finished all the three modules. The module 1 was chemistry of carbohydrates. The second module was metabolism of carbohydrates. And third module was the disorders and the regulation of blood glucose level. So these both are all three modules are interconnected. So please do watch and do not forget to subscribe channel OYG. And if you feel it was helpful, these classes were useful, please share it with your friends too. And thank you. And at last, I'll thank Team OYG and Bhavit sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity to learn by teaching. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for these three modules, and these three modules comprises the whole carbohydrate of chemistry, and that is how we comprises the learning part and learn everything from the three modules, and hope it will be useful for every student who is from medical field. And thank you so much, Mahima, that you have comprised and done a small work for
Thank
this
you, sir. Thank you
platform.
for the
Thank you.
opportunity because I
Thank
got to
you.
learn so many things.
Thank you.